Gee, Steve, what are we going to do tonight?
Same thing we do every podcast. Tell him how we sees it.
You know this guy, right?
Jackson Pollock.
Jackson Pollock, that's right, the drip painter. Okay, he let his mind go blank and his hand go where it wanted. Not deliberate, not random, someplace in between. They called it automatic art. Let's make this like Star Trek, okay? Engage intellect.
Excuse me?
I'm Kirk, your head's the warp drive. Engage intellect. What if Pollock had reversed the challenge? What if instead of making art without thinking, he said, you know what? I can't paint anything unless I know exactly why I'm doing it. What would have happened?
He never would have made a single mark.
Yes, you see, there's my guy. There's my buddy who thinks before he opens his mouth. He never would have made a single mark. The challenge is not to act automatically. It's to find an action that is not automatic, from painting to breathing to talking to fucking to falling in love. And for the record, Ava's not pretending to like you. And her flirting isn't an algorithm to fake you out. You're the first man she's met that isn't me. And I'm like her dad, right? Can you blame her for getting a crush on you?
Here we go. It's How We Sees It, episode 276. This week we're doing our throwback episode. This is where we do a release for the month that came out 10, 15, 20, 25 even. I think we've gone back as 40 years. Did we get that? Did we get that far?
Yeah, we did. Well, we did 50 years with Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
We did do that one. So yeah, quite a few years. But this one's only a 10-year-old one. This week we're covering Ex Machina that came out in 2015. It actually came out some places in 2014, but here in the United States it came out in March of 2015.
And since we live in the United States, it seemed apropos to follow along with the release date here. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean we're better. You know, no, I'm not going to say that. We might have it. We have some international listeners. I would never say we're completely better. I'm fucking with you. But yeah, so this is a highly touted movie. People talk about this all the time, and man, the podcast I listened to, some people were just like, "Oh my god, this is the greatest sci-fi movie ever." I had never seen it. And yeah. It's one of those things I was like, oh, what am I missing? And then when I got through it, I'm like, okay. Well, we'll get to that. Right. Artificial intelligence, a psychological thriller, drama, sci-fi. It's got all the bits. Directed by Alex Garland, written by Alex Garland. I think this was his first directorial release.
Oh, really? Okay. I know he's done some movies since then that.
He's done some since then, but I think this was like his big first movie.
First directing gig. He wrote 28 Days Later, and this was his first. He also did Civil War, which was his latest. That was out last year. It's actually something I've been wanting to watch. I just have never gotten around to doing it. And a TV miniseries called Devs that I've heard is not too bad. Pretty interesting. As a director. Annihilation, I remember seeing that in the theater too. That's with Natalie Portman, I believe. Really more bizarre than Ex Machina.
So. Interesting. Okay. Oh, I'll have to check it out.
Or not.
But yeah, so he wrote Dread. A lot of people were talking about Dread and stuff like that. The other thing, this is a very small crew, very small budget too for what it was. Oscar Isaac, Domhnall Gleeson. I've heard it pronounced a couple different ways, and I'm trying to read it now, and I'm like, well, what's going on here?
Now you got me. Now I'm.
It's Irish. It's Irish, and I kind of remember someone was saying that they heard him talk about it, and it was almost like Domhnall, like Donald, but it was Domhnall.
Okay.
Domhnall Gleeson.
I wasn't
Alicia,
prepared. I should have prepared for that.
Yeah, Alicia
Vikander, I think is fair.
Vikander. That's it. All right. Yeah. The three main, and then Sonoya Mizuno.
Is that Kyoko?
Yeah, Kyoko. A lot of speaking roles for her, like just line after line. Just she never shuts up.
What do you mean? She had a firewall on her voice, right? She couldn't even. Well, who knows?
I don't think she has a word in the whole movie.
Oh no, she doesn't. No, but
Yeah.
he referred to putting a firewall on her programming
Yeah.
so that she couldn't share any of his secrets.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny. He says that she can't speak English and stuff like that, but it's just an interesting, crazy. This is crazy cool. Interesting movie, and we'll talk about all that before.
Oh, wait, now you're sending mixed messages. You kind of went meh at first, and now you're saying crazy cool. Which is it, Noah? Let's get our drinks on, and then we'll
talk about it. That's what I was trying to do. I was going to say, before we talk about this, we got to get a drink in, and that's what we do on Always Sees It. We create a cocktail that we pair with whatever we're watching, and so we paired stuff for Ex Machina. And what do you got there, Steve?
Well, I'll tell you, I came up with the title first of my cocktail, and then I went a completely different direction, and I almost changed the title, but then I said, fuck it, I really like that title, so I just stuck it on there anyway, and I tried to make it mean something, but I'll tell you why. But anyway, my cocktail was kind of inspired by the Pollock painting, the Jackson Pollock painting that they refer to in it. I know Nathan shows Caleb the painting and trying to relate it to the programming of Ava, and he talks about the painting and the drip strokes not being deliberate, not random, someplace in between. And they call it automatic art. That's what Jackson Pollock referred to it, or maybe his critics referred to it as. I liked that idea of automatic art. That's kind of referenced in some more dialogue, which we can reference later. But I decided I was going to try to create a Jackson Pollock-inspired cocktail. So I started with my base cocktail, which the idea was it was going to create a canvas so I could do my Jackson Pollock-inspired drip garnish. So my cocktail itself, I used 2 ounces of apple brandy. I chose apple brandy because there's a lot of biblical references to Eve and the Garden of Eden, kind of the tree behind. And I thought the apple of temptation made a lot of sense. So I started with apple brandy. There's half ounce of lemon juice, half ounce of honey syrup, 1/4 ounce of an Amaro. I went with a Cyrene Canto Amara. This is a new one I discovered. I liked that idea because it refers to, the Cyrene is Italian for siren, which is, they're the manipulative seductresses that can draw you in, which I thought was really appropriate with this, or, questioning whether or not their motives questioning whether or not they're programming or motives. I don't even know what you call it with AI, but and then a half ounce of Benedictine, and then I added egg white to froth it up, and that became my canvas. And actually, I created. If you take all those ingredients and you multiply them by 2, I made myself a double, so I had a larger canvas to work with. Shook it all up. I had some Angostura bitters, and then when I had my canvas, what I did is I took some of my I took some honey syrup along with in a couple bowls, and then in some other bowls I added some of my coconut cream from my last week's drink, and I mixed in different colored liqueurs. Like I had some Aperol with a little red, some blue curacao for a blue, some Midori for a green, some Benedictine for, well, that was my original. Not Benedictine, some grenadine. That was going to be my original red, but it turned into kind of a brown. So, and I also used some more Angostura. And then what I did is I just kind of created a drip cocktail on the top, or splatter on top. And I don't know, if you look at the picture, I think I was pretty pleased with how it turned out. So that's my Pollock-inspired drip garnish that I've splattered on top. And unfortunately, it really heavily, the cocktail on its own, I tried beforehand. I was really excited about it. But once I put this layer of sweetness, I'm actually drinking it with a straw because it's suddenly way too oversweet. So I'm not necessarily as excited about it as I was when I first tried it. But Anyway, with the straw, it's okay. Now, I called it the Robo Boogie, and this was inspired by that epic dance sequence in the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
That is absurd and hilarious and really, I don't know. I'm always just riveted when it comes on screen. I've watched this movie like 5 times, so I've played that scene back more than that many times. So, and I kind of it was inspired by Flight of the Conchords, which has a song "Robot," which any listeners out there know that Flight of the Conchords, there's only 2 styles of dancing for robots. There's the robot and the Robo Boogie. So this is the Robo Boogie inspired by it's Kyoko that's dancing with Nathan here, and they're dancing in sync. It's an epic dance, so I had to call it the Robo Boogie. So that's it. I'm gonna tear up the fucking dance floor. Check it out. There you go. Cheers. And I've already completely decimated my my Jackson Pollock inspired drip because I started drinking a little earlier.
Yeah, no, you got to. Well, and we had some technical difficulties earlier, so of course you started drinking.
Ooh, that is sweet. I've foregone the straw now. Now I'm just drinking direct.
I was all over the place on trying to find a drink for this, and I kept doing searches for like AI robot drinks and cocktail, and it kept getting all kinds of not just what I was looking for. So just going back and forth, I couldn't find anything that I really latched onto. And it came down right. I mean, not too much long before we started this podcast, I finally found and decided to go with what I'm going with, and it's called a dirty robot or the dirty robot. And it's a pretty simple drink. I found it, and I changed up there's a little bit, but it called for whiskey, lime, and ginger ale. And so I went over and looked at my bar, and I was like, okay, what am I going to do with this? And I found a peach whiskey, and I was like, oh, that works really good, because I wanted to kind of like, in this, the dirty robot, right, is the dirty manipulation that they had, and they're kind of, the one gets a little sexy. Yeah. Kind of like a sex toy robot in a way. And so I was kind of like, I was going to call it a dirty, sexy robot. And so the peach whiskey to me kind of fit that, because, you kind of talk about girls and their peach and, the emoji of the peach and all that. And I was like, okay, so she's a dirty, sexy robot. And then it's Kyoko. Right? Is that, yeah, Kyoko. I was like, what else I want to add is, and she's has an Asian background, and to me that screamed Midori. So I threw in 2 ounces of the peach whiskey, threw in 1.5 ounces of Midori, and then I topped it off with a ginger ale. So it was about a 8-ounce ginger ale on top of that in a Collins glass. Pretty simple, basic. Really tasty. My wife came over and she's like, "Oh, that's really good." And so it's a very simple, easy drink, but it's just the dirty robot. And it not a whole lot deep into it, just a kind of a sexy drink that to honor these dirty robots.
Nice.
So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, cheers.
Yep. And I'm about halfway through it. It is really tasty, so I'll give it that.
Well, this movie, I thought had one of the most concise openings. It's like one. Well, it's just a couple of shots, but it gets him. It's when he's sitting at his console and he gets the prize, and then so much is learned in just this little 20-second clip where you find out, oh, he's a programmer, he's won a prize, everyone comes and congratulates him, there's some sort of scanning going on his face, and then suddenly he's on a helicopter. I really, I just wanted to point out, it was one of the first notes I wrote when I was watching this again, that it's just really efficient storytelling for an opening. It just gets you there right away, and
it is.
Almost
they don't
the whole
beat
movie
around the
takes
bush.
place after that, all in the same in a single location, or at least in a single region. But
that's kind of what I got out of this. It screams low budget when you get down to the brass tacks of it, right?
It was low budget. Yeah, I think it was like 15.
Yeah. That's and people are like, oh, it doesn't show because it's so good, and I was like, well, no, it really does show because they did a good job with what they had, but there's very limited set. There's very limited. I mean, now and the AI, or not the AI, but the special effects that they did. They had to do it because they have this actress, but she's got this clear robotic portions of her body, you know, this slick skin and stuff like that. So you know they had to do some kind of special effects for it, and they did a really good job with it. And like I said, but it's everything else.
Did you read some about the special effects? Because it did win the Oscar for best special effects. Yeah. It beat out Star Wars Force Awakens, Mad Max, Fury Road, another one that was really big. It was just kind of blew out all these big, huge budget movies with just this small budget. They didn't use any green screens at all.
That was the impressive part.
Yeah, so they kind of. And
I think that came into why it won is because it went outside of the typical.
I think the lack of green screens probably enhanced the performances. You know, a lot of people talk about doing those Star Wars movies with George Lucas, where they're just sitting inside a big three-dimensional green screen room with interacting with a piece of paper with a circle on it, a bar with a circle on it, and
a stick with a whole
with a jar, flat piece of paper on top or something like that. It doesn't scream drama or performance and stuff. Whereas this movie, I think the simplistic AI, it was just right enough to where you weren't distracted by it. And it certainly didn't distract from the performances. I was really taken more by the performances than the special effects, just because the special effects to me just seem so elegant and non-intrusive.
Well, and the acting in this, I'm not going to say it's not good, but it wasn't difficult in the aspect of I didn't see huge swings of emotions. I didn't see stuff that was just.
I loved Oscar Isaac as Nathan. I loved the way he portrayed it. I was really.
I'm not saying he didn't.
Well, I gotta
do
say,
good.
All three of the characters I was drawn towards for different reasons. So
okay,
I see what you're saying, that the range necessarily. I mean, they had characters. The characters didn't have these crazy evolutions necessarily.
Yeah.
I agree with that, but I still thought they were very they were large roles. They were roles that were very character driven. And I liked that, and I thought they put them
I do agree that, and I think there's some of it that goes into it, but I also think there's some of it that is not challenging as some other roles might be. But I'm not saying they didn't do a good job, and I'm not saying it wasn't well written. I think it was kind of simplistic in its writing. It wasn't like, I was surprised at how simplistic this movie was in the story for the way it was pushed, and amped up in people's, to me, it was like maybe the hype is too high.
Okay. Your expectations were set at a certain level.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. And maybe that's because it's been 10 years and I've heard so much about it. And then even after watching it and listening to some people talk about it, I'm like, they're like, and these are, I listened to podcasts that went back as far as 10 years that were almost like this was coming out in the theaters. It's crazy that podcasting has been around that long now. It seems like it just started last year, but, and then some that were like this year and within a year. But some of the people were talking about this was literally their favorite and the most incredible, sci-fi movie. And I was like, whoa, that's.
I think science fiction can sometimes, they even have a reference to Star Trek. Star Trek has a certain, it's more of a. It's not like it's different than Star Wars, which is much more action, swashbuckling, whereas Star Trek is more the thinking man storytelling. And we talked about that with Picard and stuff like that. I think this kind of carried that through, and it left a lot of things up to interpretation. And once you do that, if you do it in a way that I thought it did it in a thoughtful way, it was bringing a lot of ideas in, didn't answer everything, and then you just get people on these, on forums and podcasts and stuff coming up with interpretations, and that gets people excited.
And that's what I think this did more than a lot of other movies, is it left so much up to interpretation that some people were creating their own stories with this and almost like making themselves believe that this was part of the that's where I think some of this is, and maybe it's just I've been saturated with it, the overhypeness. But I was like, at the end, I was like, oh, okay.
Well,
I mean, it's crazy, but
I will tell you some of the comments I was reading about this, or some of the things I was listening to, made me kind of roll my eyes a little bit and say, that's, you're going a little crazy with that. You're getting yourself a little overhyped, or
a little over your skis.
Yeah, but at the same time, I get it. Sometimes movies. This is a sort of movie. This reminded me a lot of Heretic, the movie that we saw last year with Alicia during our Halloween podcast month. Which to me, I think was my favorite movie that came out in 2024 that I saw. I love that. But again, that's the same sort of movie in that you've got this kind of godlike egoist, that's trying to manipulate or it's trying to about escape, how are you going to escape this prison? And then there's a lot of ambiguity in the ending where it's open for interpretation. So I was thinking about that today. I think I like both of these movies a lot for the same reason. So, and that's something that just resonates with me. I get excited about this sort of stuff, especially when I kind of discover it without not knowing much going in. So I understand what you're saying about, too much hype. Sometimes that can set you up for something, put you in a mood for something. I saw this in the theaters, so I really didn't.
Well, that's, I think,
a little bit more blind going in.
And maybe part of what I was is, it's a very thinking movie, right? It's a very slow burn, not a lot of like action. It's a lot of thinking.
Yeah.
And so if you're not in the mood for that, right? It could be, I mean, just like everything, you're in the mood for it or you're not. If this is one of those things where you're not in the mood for that type of movie, it could be it could almost come off as boring.
Well, like, I think you could look at a movie like 2001, Stanley Kubrick, which, funny enough, Oscar Isaac, used Stanley Kubrick as someone he tried to mimic for this role, which I thought was fascinating. That's why he had the beard like that. But 2001 is a very dull, slow-paced.
I agree. I think it also gets a little bit over its skis.
It's very monotone. So if you're going in looking for something that's just going to get you amped up and stuff, that's not the case. At the same time, they use it to the advantage in the end when Hal is doing things. And my God, that scene when he's stuck outside and the explosion, he's blown away from the hatch or something like that, and it's completely silent. I think that's their way of kind of amplifying this silence in a way that creates this tension that you just never experienced before because you're so used to something more cinematically. Well, maybe not at the time because we're used to Star Wars that kind of created this orchestra that followed it.
Well, it was a different style of sci-fi space movie.
But I do see that same sort of monotone in this movie. I think the characters elevated it more beyond that, though, to be honest. No, I'm not dissing on 2001. I think that's an epic movie. But I wonder how I was really drawn to the characters, which gave me a certain glee watching the movie.
No, I think they're all great, and I think there's a lot. To me, this is also might have been better as a book.
Oh, okay.
Where you know what I mean? Where like when they're talking, and you're getting what they're saying, but in a book you could get so much more description and so much more background thoughts and what's going on in the brain if they took a specific point of view.
I could see reading a book and getting a lot more detail. I think this is if this was a movie that was adapted from a book, I would consider this a really good adaptation and a really good cinematic adaptation. So, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so now that we've talked a little bit about all that, one of the things I did want to talk about, like, because this is kind of left up to your interpretations, and what is your feelings about Ava in the end? Like, do you think of her as a bad guy or as a victim?
I think of her as a creature of her programming. Is she sentient? I mean, does she have a certain consciousness? I think you could certainly interpret it that, considering how Nathan talked about how the AI was developed, how it evolves.
If you had to put someone in the villain of this film, would you have picked Nathan or would you have picked Ava?
Nathan.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay. I actually think Ava is the villain of this.
They're both manipulators, but since he is the Dr. Frankenstein and Ava is the Frankenstein's monster, I think Nathan is responsible for Ava's ultimate actions. I think what she does is...
But he never kills anybody.
No, but he programmed her. He pulled the strings. What happened was not his doing.
He was an idiot in the end of it.
Yeah, and it wasn't what he was doing directly, but it was certainly he set all the dominoes in motion. I understand your question because he does explore that about when he goes into like nature nurture and this idea of where does what are they referring to when he's talking about nature and nurture? That's one of the original things that Caleb is referring to when it comes to chess, right? Is he talking about?
I think he was talking about, he's like, you're straight, right? And he's like, it's not because you were, programmed that way. It was because he goes,
right.
But you kind of were. You were programmed from nature and from nurture.
Yeah. And
he was talking about being straight or gay at that point.
Yeah.
But to me, it's one of those this is where it gets very interesting. And this is where it got very interesting listening to different podcasts coming from different aspects. Women tend to almost across the board, almost 100%. And I didn't talk to everybody, but the ones I did listen to, Ava was straight up a victim. She was the hero of the movie. Everybody else, I was like, she killed somebody, and she left someone to die.
Okay, but that wasn't your question. Your question wasn't who's the victim. I don't think I would have.
No, I'm saying though that I think she's a villain, but no, that across the board they're calling her a victim. I don't think she's a victim.
I think of her kind of like Hunger Games, where she's thrown into a maze and her goal is to get out, and she has been programmed to do whatever it takes to get out, and this is where
it also comes into the fact that we're still talking about an AI, a created being, not an actual born into life. That's where this gets into all kinds of like, is a robot real, whether they have a conscience or not? I mean, it's
sure, and it's fair. I mean, I'm interacting a lot with AI these days with what I'm doing for work, and I think I've already talked about it when I was doing some of my Harry Potter cocktails. I was actually using AI to help generate my cocktails because that was my magic that I was tapping into. So, but it's kind of unnerving, just AI that's built into your fucking Google browser that, which is kind of funny because he's basing all of his programming off of a search engine, Blue Book, which is informing this programming. That's how he's informing everything. By your search history and stuff. And I liked his comment where it's not what you're searching for, it's not what you think, it's how you think that it's informing, which was
it is. That's one of the main things with this. It is very thought provoking with the whole thing, and it's just interesting to me that across the board, and this comes into the sexist attitude of movies and shows and stuff, where women all thought of her as a victim, and I was like, well, they're all kind of victims in a way. But none of them
go to Frankenstein. Let's talk about Frankenstein. That was my example. Is Dr. Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster is, if you want to label it as victim, or because Frankenstein's monster kills, is Frankenstein's monster. I'm just trying to take gender out of the conversation.
No, I know. I was bringing that up specifically because of the situations in this one, very specifically, right? You have her who uses sexuality and flirting to manipulate.
She does,
Caleb,
and it's interesting how you perceive Nathan, what, some of his, he is a genius. He's got this presence, this power. He's completely egotistical and narcissistic, but he's also got some flaws, and you can really get a sense of his isolation. I mean, he's been surrounded by,
as part of the story.
Huh? What's that?
They bring that up as a big part of that story is they're underground, so there's no windows, everything he flies in. Even jokingly, he's like, oh yeah, the people that built this, I had to have them killed so that, they have my secrets. Now, and he says, the way he says that, they never come back to it. And they never like, oh, I'm just joking. It's literally like, is he telling the truth?
I know,
right?
I know.
What's going on there?
But that's just kind of feeding into to the conspiracy of what's going on. Is he really? Well, not conspiracy, but just this question of. It's almost like the same question of AI. Are they? Can they really? Do they have consciousness or do they not? And what does that actually mean? Is he really killing people or not? Yeah.
But I mean, you have to use. I mean, I know you keep going back to Frankenstein, but in this part of it, as much as Nathan is a sick bastard and a pervert and created sex robots, essentially,
right,
she uses all of that manipulatively. So
yes,
how does that?
She does, yeah.
So that's what I mean. Is that any better than Nathan in the long run?
Well, I would argue now, just kind of like with humans, as when we're young, there's a certain innocence we have that we're not considered. There's a certain early age where we're not necessarily responsible for our own actions because we don't know better, and then there's a time when we kind of gain this moral understanding. I would say I don't know where Ava is in that regard, but I think there is definitely an evolution to her character where at some point, hell yes, she's responsible for her own actions. Do I know whether or not that time has come? If she's just a victim of her,
well, that's the other thing. Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, if you take it, she's the iteration of they show at least 5 or 6 other robots. So I don't. They take her as innocent. Oh, she's young. She's 1 year old, or how old are you? I'm 1. 1 day, 1 month, 1 year. They don't really say.
Yeah, yeah.
So they play that innocence, like you said, a baby, but she also has all of the information programmed into her from Google searches or whatever, forever. So really, she's probably older than the majority of people put together. So it's kind of like,
well, you can't. What did you ever see the movie Her, Scarlett Johansson?
No, they did talk a lot about. Yeah, I have not seen that one. I know that's one I've heard about too.
It's a fascinating movie. It's another one that I think you might find boring, but just because it's not, it's more about Joaquin Phoenix. I don't think. Well, he played Joker, and I don't think you're a big fan of his. But it plays kind of a geek that has this AI that it's a new enhanced AI, Scarlett Johansson's voice, and it becomes a friend, and then he basically has a relationship in the sense that it becomes his partner. But then she has so much processing power that in between sentences, she can have conversations with a million other people, and he starts developing jealousy. So when you say that what does one mean? Because is time the same as for her as it is for us? Of course not. It's something that's completely different. And so, yeah, maybe her how she processes things is completely different than just like in Her. My example was that she could have a million conversations all at once, and he'd feel jealous of that, and that became kind of a breakdown of their relationship, and she finally left him.
Funny. Well, it was just one of the things that it struck me watching it that they play off on this innocence and stuff, but then you watch the actual actions, and when it all comes down to the end, you're like, not innocent at all, very much manipulative, very much, to me, the villain of this story in a way. Now, the other thing it brought up to my thought process was Nathan in this drinks a lot, right? He's drinking 90% of this movie, which I would have helped me find a cocktail, but it was mostly beer and wine, and
I think
it was
the beer was invented for the movie, and then I looked up the.
Actually, no, I read something. It's a Korean beer,
is it?
Or
there was
and it means the the name on it is written in Korean, and it meant oh God, what was it? It was plan.
Okay.
And so it was supposed to be a play on like they all have a plan. They all have a path and an idea of what's going on. You know, they're all on their own trajectory. And so that was done on purpose. You're right. It might be a made up beer, but it was named purposely.
Yeah.
To have a deeper meaning.
Yeah. The vodka was kind of. I looked up the name of the vodka that he was drinking at the end. Because I was doing the same thing, and I found a picture of the vodka from the movie, you know. So it's like, oh, I don't know, I didn't. So I kind of stopped there. It's like, this is a rabbit's hole I'm going to go down into.
But what I wanted to go into is in the very end, Nathan comes out and he you know, he's like the Caleb's plan to get him drunk and rewrite the code and all this, and so he's trying to get him to drink to do this. Which also, if he had already done it, it didn't make sense when you thought about back after that. But he's like, oh no, I'm gonna go sober, and it's only, you know, wheat and whatever for me, or wheat and water and stuff like that, you know. And then, you know, he goes in and he goes like, oh, I had this whole plan all along. I knew about the power outages. I had this video, and to me, I was like, was drinking part of his deception? And he's been listening the whole time, like. If he knew that he had set him up for her to try and get out, why would he have not put more roads into stopping her if she was able to figure out a way out? And also, why would he have not have really gone in and put that camera in earlier so that he could catch it? You know, it just, there was things at the end where I was like, oh, that's a great twist, but you forgot a lot of little things. And like, why would Caleb be trying to get him drunk again if he had already done all that the night before? You know, he makes this big statement, is like, oh, you know, he tells her when the power goes out, yeah, I'll get him drunk and I'll rewrite the code and do all this. And then he's like, oh, I saw that video and I know what you're going to do. And he's like, oh yeah, well, I've already done it. Then why was he trying to get him drunk again? You know, it almost didn't make sense. There was like, it missed some. You're like, you got over your skis a little in the writing. So, but the main thing for me was like, was Nathan, was he not as smart as he thought he was? If he knew all that, did he just, what part did he mess up when he was trying to?
I think the drinking was legit. There was, in fact, he talks about what the good deeds a man has done defends him. The good deeds a man has done defends him. When he's drinking and he's trying to, it almost seems like he's trying to atone for something, that what he's gotten himself into. So I think there's a legitimate regret. He recognizes that he has got good and evil in him. So I think there's a lot of conflict in Nathan. Okay.
That's a good point. Good point.
So
I did. Go ahead.
Yeah, how the end played out as far as the manipulation and the double cross, and I was one. You know, it's almost like a chess game. Who was one step ahead and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've watched it a few times, and kind of each time I get a little bit of better sense of how it's played out, but it hasn't completely filled in all the holes. So I understand what you're saying too.
It's a math problem that they didn't actually solve.
Well, maybe they did. Yeah, no. I mean, I do sometimes. I'm going to say that because a lot of the forums I found where there's a lot of people in a lot of Reddit forums and stuff that pose a lot of questions about this movie, and it's fascinating. I've seen a lot of different interpretations, but each one typically comes up with an answer that puts all of it together in different ways. So what I'm saying is that there's almost enough ambiguity and wiggle room to where you can come up with a theory of how it all plays together in more ways than one. But on the surface, it does seem a little suspect. So I've seen enough of that with some of the comments and conversations out there that I'm willing to trust that there was some sort of grand scheme. I know he took a lot of time writing it, but I'm not trying to negate what you're saying. I'm just saying that I think it's worth more investigation if that really is something that bothers you and you want to get to the bottom of.
Yeah, no, it's one of those. By the end of it, and then the more people talked about it, I was like, oh, there's something's just not acting.
Well, part of me is like, why the hell was Ava ever able to stab you? I mean, wouldn't you have thrown in some sort of programming that would defend that? And so there's questions about that. There's a lot of theories about that, about how maybe, about how Kyoko plays a role in that, and how Ava was able to communicate, and what Nathan did to Kyoko, killed Kyoko basically by, I don't know, punching her in the mouth and her jaw flew off and she was down. She was done. Maybe that was an override mechanism that allowed Ava to drive the stake through the heart and twist. But I don't know. I really don't. And they don't have answers. I mean, it's almost like they purposely leave some of that kind of vague. True. Because they so you can come up with your own answer, or you can say, oh, nope, that doesn't add up. I mean, I think both is fair.
I agree. And, the stabbing scene, to me, the one thing that I was like a little bit, that doesn't, is it the knife just slid in?
It really did. It almost
looked
easy. Yeah, it almost looked like it was an AI knife that they filled in later. There was just no clear. At the same time, it was one of those Japanese incredibly sharp knives. So maybe it was a Ginsu knife that just how those.
But it was also in the back of the rib area, which the likelihood of hitting
a bone or something like that.
A bone or it slid in way too easy on both sides, and I was just like, ooh, like Then I was like,
that he was just backing up. It wasn't. I agree with you there. That didn't look as convincing, and I bet in post production they were like, oh, that doesn't look very convincing. It's like, well, that's that's what we have.
It was either that, or I thought, well, maybe they're trying to say that the
that should have lost them the Academy Award. Damn it!
The robots were just super strong, so it just was easy for them to push through.
I disagree with that, because he was able to, or she.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's where the math doesn't add up on that part.
Yeah, I don't think they were programmed to have extra human strength, because he wanted to be.
Well, they're very fragile.
He wanted to be able to handle them in bed, and
very fragile. Yeah. So, but it was good. Now, a big part of this too is the conversations, right? And that's
7 sessions, which I found was. Do you think that was like the 7? On the first day, God created blah blah blah. 7 days of creation.
Oh, could be. They were just.
I admit, I did see someone post that as something that was kind of alluding to a lot of the God stuff behind it, the biblical nature of Eve and the creation of the heaven and earth, and how it took 7 days, and in this case, it took 7 sessions.
Could be. I never put too much into it. I figure it was the 7 days that he was there. He was supposed to be there for a week, right?
Okay.
And the main thing that really bugged me, and this is where I still think Ava is the true villain of this, is in the end where she just walks off and leaves Caleb to die.
Oh my God, I know. It was like she shut off any sort of, like, it almost shows that the whole thing was just complete manipulation.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And that's where I was like, when you look at that, you got to go back and go, that's true evilness, to be able to perpetrate the innocence and the manipulation. And then in the end, absolutely have zero care.
But you realize how much you're giving to programming. You're saying, because I mean, this is a robot we're talking about that was created, and you're really saying,
then it's a robot, and then that means it's still just a pure evil thing, and there's no chance of it having any humanity and being good.
Evil is a personification. Is this idea that is a human trait. It's not a. Not a pro. I mean, what do you say? A program is evil? Is that what you're saying? Or a program is written to do harm?
That would be an evil program.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think the word evil denotes a quality.
I didn't say evil. I said villain.
No, you said evil. That I was responding to when you said evil. But
but what she did was evil.
Okay.
Regardless if it's the program or not, it's the action at the end. It was what it was, regardless of whether that's who she is or not. What she did was evil.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that she is not a she. She is not a human. So do we you should have zero. Do we basically say that? I mean, if somebody wrote a program that went out and stole a whole bunch of money from a bank, and deposited it, and you're not going to arrest the program. Right? I mean, you can call the program.
Well, you would delete the program.
The program is not the villain. It's so. Okay, I'm just saying. It is
okay. All right, then you're telling me that you don't feel Ava is any kind of sentient being at all.
I'm questioning that. I'm saying that you're.
Well, you're defending it like it's not.
I'm saying that you are well in that corner. You are completely in that corner I'm questioning whether you're completely in that corner that says she is
okay, here we go. Here we go. Well,
I think if she is a sentient being with consciousness and understands the difference between good and evil, she was absolutely the villain. So I will give you that, but I do question whether that's the case.
I think that's what they're trying to say, is that the whole process of this was they were trying to create a AI robot, right, that can pass as a human, which means that they have sentient thought processes and stuff like that. So here we go.
Do you think Nathan is?
He's not innocent.
If Nathan survived, and if Ava went out and started killing people, would he be equally responsible?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
It would just.
Yeah. She should be deactivated, and he should be. He should be held responsible. I get that. I agree with that.
And it's one of those things when you think about it today is like, if a child is under 18 and they commit a major crime, a lot of the times the parents are held accountable.
Sure, there was that school shooting where both the parents, I think, were.
So that is the case in this, right?
Oh my gosh!
Now,
yes. Fascinating question, and I don't have
all of it. Does not fall onto the parent. Part of it does fall onto the person or the entity.
Absolutely.
So that's where.
But where do you draw that line? When do you decide that someone has a moral
18.
compass? That's
legally it's 18.
Yeah. What about
legally
with AI?
It's 18.
What about with AI? I mean,
you got to decide when.
It's a new question.
It's one. It's one. But no, Nathan is not innocent in this. I'm not saying he is an innocent in this. I am saying that he created something that could think like a human, and humans are technically can be flawed and usually are flawed. There's no perfect humans, so can turn evil. And I'm doing air quotes. Yeah. You can't see it, but I'm doing air quotes. And therefore are the villain.
Do you think
it doesn't alleviate Nathan of his responsibilities either?
He's pretty abusive the way he treats the AI.
He's hell of abusive, and that's what they're trying to do, is make you think. This is where they're trying to go. Oh, she's a victim because all these other robots before her were treated so poorly. That doesn't excuse the fact, though.
No, I'm just saying if does it doesn't excuse the fact that he abuses them.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't change the fact that she can go become a killer just because these previous robots were abused by him.
No,
it doesn't change the fact that what she did was still evil.
There's a question though when we see his abuse, when we see the way he abuses it in some of those flashback videos and stuff like that. Do you think if they are true, robots, programs and stuff, it doesn't mean a fucking thing. It just means they're programming. He can treat him however he wants to. He's not. There's nothing.
There is part to that, yes, but But
so if he believes that.
Oh, I got a good question.
If he believes that they are worthy of being treated like they are not humans, then it is fair almost to say that he is responsible for their programming because he believes they are not humans. I'm thinking this through as we go. So
no, I know, and that's what this movie does, and I think this is why people like it so much, is because it brings up all these questions. So in the modern day right now, I've seen videos of today's robots, right, where they're walking around and people are fucking abusing them. They're kicking them and knocking them down. Like they're just being, violent to be violent with them.
Sure.
And it's like, does that make it any better? We know they're robots. We know, so is that any different than this? It's
I would say it doesn't make me empathize. I mean, if I empathize with the robot, then there's a certain flaw in that. I mean, that means that, you're considering they have a conscience, and that's not really right. But I think it's still fair to question whether or not the person doing the abuse is a little fucked up, is a little screwed up.
Yeah, and that's what I think they
and so it
show
almost draws a question about the abuser rather than the robot that you can consider a victim. But if it's all about whether they're a victim or not, that means you're defining them as more than programming. So
I think they put that in this movie specifically to really make Nathan seem more of a bad guy than not, and give the victimhood to Ava by showing what happened with the other robots. Because yes, he also just wants this conversation out there, because a lot of this stuff, you're not faced with unless you're suddenly it's in front of you in a situation. Like some movies can bring out interesting conversations. I think this does a good job, and just the conversation we're having, I think is it makes you think.
Gives it some clout.
Yeah. We haven't really talked a lot about her, but Kyoko is kind of one of those where you see he is kind of an asshole, and you're not, I don't know how many people weren't sure right away, but I kind of figured she was a robot right off the bat.
Yeah.
There was something about her being just too now. And I don't know if they did this on purpose, but they had her as an Asian, right? And in movies in the past and in different things, they've always had them have this kind of meek, stoic type personality in the background where they don't stand up for themselves a lot. And it's like, I wonder if they used that. Like if it would have been a different, like if they would have had a black woman in that role, would you have been, oh no, that's a robot right off the bat? Or if they'd have had, like a fiery redhead, you're like, oh no, they wouldn't put up with that shit. Where it was this, you know what I mean? It kind of leans
in, because I think he was creating. I mean, there's talk that he was creating a sex toy. He certainly created Ava. I mean, it kind of came out that he created Ava as based on Caleb's search history and kind of his pornography history.
Which means he was watching that dude for a long time, probably.
Well, yeah, but he was basing so it leans into the fact that the attraction is probably something more than just
physical
good conversation. There's something. Everything about her is completely catered to his every desire, and that's hard to fight. I'm guessing that Kyoko was probably built to, and in fact, if you look at in the closet, that when she finally you see,
there's a bunch of different people.
They're almost, but there's some similarities between the other ones. Whereas Ava, her physicality.
Well, they were all thin, smaller breast, kind of around the same height.
Well, Ava seemed a little shorter, and
she was definitely shorter. That's what that threw me off a little bit.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, she was catered towards Caleb, where all the other ones were catered towards Nathan and his kind of desires.
Were they, or was there another Caleb at some point?
There could have been. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. This was just my trying to interpret why the difference is because she was built to a certain ideal perfection that perhaps Nathan, his search history or something like that was.
So that was my other big problem with this is that they make Nathan's supposed to be this super genius that could write this code and program this thing. He couldn't also create the liquid brain and the syntheskin. Like I'm sorry, there's not one person that can do all of that in their one brain. There's not one genius enough. Not only be able to create it, but to manufacture it, right? To actually physically make it happen. There's just there's reasons there's teams of scientists working on these things because people have specific things that they do. Like you'll have someone that can write code that couldn't walk themselves out of a fucking room if the door was locked, right? They're not going to be able to build a robot android body.
Did they give a sense of the history of how? I mean, did it?
Well, I mean,
the
if
fact that he created this completely himself, because I'm assuming he had Blue Book. He created a whole search engine. He's got scientists to.
Well,
to
search
feed
engine
into.
is all software. There's no real physical to it.
No. I just mean that, you know, he's in his. I think he was in his late 30s at the time he shot this. I'm just saying he's going to have a history with working with scientists. Did they actually address that he did this all himself?
It seemed to me like it was like he had this secret lair workshop, and there's no other people around.
I would agree with you that he couldn't do this alone. I would not agree with you that this is alluding to that fact.
It seemed to me very much.
It all exists in one time. They don't really go into the background of everything. You know, he did talk about the house being built and having to kill all the people as a joke. Ha ha ha. So
where's the rest of the scientist team that have been like, okay, why are you making this body? Like, oh, I need a robot body. Well, why? Well,
do you think the fact that they didn't answer that means that he did it all himself?
It seems like they were trying to allude to that.
Okay.
With him signing the NDA, I don't know. It just in the end where she got away free, and that's kind of the way it seemed to me.
That doesn't bug me like it's bugging me, but I don't think it's. I think it has an answer that we're not in that part of his history. We don't see that history, so it's fair to
it's possible
come up with different assumptions but I agree there's no way he could do that completely himself.
Well, that's where he's in this underground. It takes 2 hours in a helicopter to get there. Isolation. Right. It seems like he's off in this. Nobody's got to know about it seemed very secretive, and that's where it's like, okay, how do you keep it secret when you've had to have so many people working on this?
Right. Did you ever see Social Network, the movie about Mark Zuckerberg?
No, I couldn't do it. No, there's something about it. I just don't want to watch that.
It would bug you, but it's still a great movie.
And I think maybe that's why I know it would bug me.
Same director that did Fight Club too. It's a really crazy movie, but I mean, he was one that kind of had this whole incident where he created Facebook in like, you know, a few weeks or something like that. He put all the things together and you know, and then he had a big engineering team, and then at some point he just kind of went a little nuts and became a more of a greedy recluse. And
I think that it's going to happen in the tech world.
I'd be interested in hearing the same sort of backstory to Nathan and what went down.
Yeah, it would be
not
interesting.
Not that I want a sequel about this, but maybe some online books about some fan fiction.
Well, another thing they were talking about too is how, like, nowadays, I mean, 10 years ago it wasn't as big deal, but now with the tech giants, the Zuckerbergs and the Musks and those, and they're like, people love to hate those people.
Sure.
And so they're automatically going, oh, Nathan's got to be a bad guy because he's these guys. And it's like, well, what is so bad? Like, is like, why is the hate so much for these people that have worked hard and given you people this avenue to hate? Like, they've given you the internet. Well, they've given you. Yeah,
the film explores those dangers of the unchecked power in tech and AI development, but it almost alludes to the same idea of big tech in our current world and Nathan's godlike approach to innovation. And so, I mean, I understand people. I think if you take the politics out of it, because that's confused a lot of things these days with Musk and
100%.
But there is a lot of skepticism about big tech, and you can be drawn towards what they're offering at the same time, completely turned off the way they flaunt their money and abuse it, and how they treat their employees and put them down. So, but again, we're all also how many steps away from it. It's not something that we're.
Oh yeah, no, we're getting closer and closer every day. I mean, it's funny when you look at all these movies about AI and robots and stuff like that, and then you look at the real robots that they have kind of going around. It's like we are far away from the smooth walking, fit in with humans without any kind of physical changes.
Yeah, although I would argue that the way our society is going, we're so much more consumed. Our world has become kind of taken over by not just social media, but connectionless interaction where we're not going to school and to classes anymore. We're zooming into to classes. Same thing with meetings. We're no longer interacting. And suddenly when your world is 90% lives in this box, that becomes a world that can completely be manipulated by AI because, so when I'm interacting with AI for some, questions I have for the work I'm doing, and it's like, man, this is really, I'm having a conversation. This is really cool. Or when you see photographs that have been generated from AI that just look flawless, and you say, "Oh my God, Trump did that." It's like, no, but so I think the world it's almost like the world we live in has become more accustomed to being taken over by AI because our world is becoming more artificially centric,
Yes. No, I get you.
So I definitely agree. Outside in the world, it's so much, we touch things, we interact with things. Those are the things. That's how we trust things. That's how we have conversations.
But here's the thing on this one. This one was a more physical manipulation than if he was talking to Ava over the phone. Caleb, or over a Zoom, or over, he wasn't physically interacting with her, even though they weren't touching, they were in a room talking face to face.
Yeah.
Would he have been manipulated as much or at a level to where he would have done what he did?
No way, because he was drawn to her, to the physicality, the presence. There was so much stuff that was taken advantage of. Just the fact that she was able to walk.
Dressing, the undressing, and there was a lot of things that were part of that manipulation to get him to do what she wanted him to do. Absolutely. Yeah, which I thought was interesting because that's literally what was, I think,
interesting too, that he was sitting in like a box. He was the one that was in the box, and she was able to, even though she was the imprisoned one. Well, he was kind of too once he came down.
I think it was kind of a separation of room.
But he was like, the way they shot it, he was sitting. It almost looked like he was in a square glass box, and she was walking around him the whole time.
Well, I think what it was is it's her room, but it has a openings broken off. So I agree.
I think what I mean is the way they shot it. It's almost like they were leaning into that.
You know what it was?
What?
She was in a zoo and he was visiting her.
Right.
That's literally what that was.
She was the cheetah, the kind of pacing back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting. So, this was. Like I said, I did not enjoy this movie as much as I would have believed I would have because of the hype.
I totally get that. I think even last week when we were trying to debate, I was a little hesitant on this one. It's like, I love this movie, but I think I said, I don't, it might be a little too pinky out for your taste or something. I wasn't sure. But I
think it's literally the people overhype this. And so you get into it if you hadn't seen it before. Now, I'm not saying it's not a good movie. I'm not saying it doesn't. I mean, it sparks conversations.
Yeah. What do you think of the dance? What do you think of the dance?
Well, the dance was hilarious and awesome. And, being who I am, I was watching Kyoko the whole time, like waiting for that shirt to fly open. Just it was what it was for sure. The way it set out, it was. Yeah, Oscar Isaac played Nathan in a way that is just so like, man, he portrayed that character. I think he was probably the best acting.
I was so enamored with him, which I think was a big part of the point. Almost like Caleb wanted to be his friend, was a little intimidated by him, but Oscar Isaac was so well cast and just. I wanted to be his friend. There was something, I mean, I felt manipulated by the whole thing. And, but my God, his ego drove me crazy. The way that, the whole God, did I write this down, or at least the quote where this is from, oh man, I'm going to butcher it, and I don't want to butcher it because it was Nathan that turned around and re-butchered it when he was talking about this is. Oh wait. Here, I got the quote. Nathan, if you created a conscious machine, it's not the history of man. That's the history of gods. That's what Caleb said. And then the next day, Nathan said, I wrote that other line you came up with. The one about how if I've invented a machine with consciousness, I'm not a man, I'm God.
I'm a god.
And Caleb's like, I don't think that's exactly what and then he interrupts. I just thought, fuck, man, that is so good. When we get to tell the story, I turned to Caleb, he looked up at me and he said, you're not a man, you're a god.
You're a god.
And it's almost like he's completely railroading Caleb and
I actually looked at that a lot for my drink, so.
Caleb's like, yeah, but I didn't say that. That it was funny at the same time. It was so frustrating. So
yeah, I mean, it really gets people talking, and that's what is good about this movie. Visually, if you're not in the mood for a thinker, you're not in the mood for a slow burn, this could be a bad movie.
Sure.
But
yeah,
I can see where some of the hype comes from. I would never, ever call this the greatest sci-fi movie of all time. I don't even know if I would. I don't know. When you look at AI and you look at robots and stuff, like just Terminator stands out to me as like, God, there's something about that. It's just even the Matrix and stuff like that. There's just something about
Let me ask you about Terminator, because Terminator, I think, is an epic movie. To me, Terminator 2 elevates that. It's an epic action movie, but at the same time, it adds more of this sort of a conversation to it in a way that Terminator did not. So what do you think?
I agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with you. I think the Terminator series, like it just adds on to it. It does start to jump the shark a little bit, but those first two are so good. And they play like you probably couldn't have had two without having one. It's like, Terminator 1 kind of walks so that Terminator 2 can run.
Sure, I get that. You couldn't have Better Call Saul without Breaking Bad.
True.
Even though it's a prequel in a sense,
Yeah, but that's I think that is now. Like I said, this is exactly what it is. It's Alex Garland wrote this early in his career. Wanted to direct it, does the direction, has a very small budget, does it in a very small way. It's not very action-packed. It does some great stuff for what it was, but it is very low budget.
Yeah. I would argue that Annihilation, which I believe was his next movie or maybe one after that, was a bit of jumping the shark. He had a lot of success with this movie, low budget. He got a little bigger budget. He tried to make more of an action-oriented movie. He created a lot more ambiguity, and it was just kind of like, ooh, there's a lot going on here. It's a little messy and stuff. And I bet you'd be having a lot of criticisms for that. And I would say, yep, your criticisms are warranted. I'm a little pushing back on some of your criticisms with this, but I think you're just coming at it from your perspective, which I think is very valid. And but I think he hasn't necessarily landed the movies as effectively. I haven't seen Civil War.
I want to see it.
That movie terrifies me. I've seen some clips and just seems.
Is it just because the idea of it, or?
What is it? Jesse Plimpton? I can't remember the actor that I know him from Breaking Bad. He was the young kid that got in season 5 that was just some twisted individual. But he was also in Fargo season 2, but he's an interesting character. In Civil War, I've seen some scenes where he is it. You can look at it politically in that he's kind of the middle, he's the white. I don't want to. How do I?
Yeah, you're trying to be safe.
He's portrayed as the poor white trash that has a gun and has completely made up his mind that his philosophy, his very kind of limited view on things is all it's about. And any sort he executes a couple reporters because they're not white skinned. You know, it's just pretty straightforward. It's just really scary, and I think it's portrayed in a way that feels like it could happen, and so that is scary.
I think there's a lot. There's a lot I want to see because of what is the possibilities, and I don't know if I'm going to agree with everything they do or say and everything that, but it makes me want to watch it, and so I've been kind of waiting for it to come out on streaming, which it's out on Max now, so I do want to see that. You know, it's funny, Alex Garland. I pulled up his IMDb, and I was like, this guy looks so familiar, and I figured out what it was. He looks like Nathan Shelley from Ted Lasso.
Alex Garland.
The director, right? The director and writer. He looks just like the character Nathan Shelley.
Which is Nathan Shelley?
Nick Mohammed. He's the guy that starts off as the Kit Man and then becomes the bad guy in season 3.
Oh, I didn't see season 3, but I did see the end of season 2 where he kind of became.
Okay, yeah.
I know what you're talking about now. Okay.
He looks. As soon as I saw that, it was like, oh, that's.
The picture I'm seeing doesn't look like that, but I'm sure you're looking at a picture that's a different.
It's his main picture on IMDb.
Okay, I'm on Wikipedia. I got to go into IMDb.
Face picture. He's got a zipped up jacket all the way up his throat. He's got the same hairstyle. He just looks just like him. I was like, oh man.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. I agree.
And it made me want to go watch Ted Lasso.
That is such a different picture than what's on Wikipedia. And on Wikipedia, he looks 20 years older, and he's got a gray beard and mustache. And
that might be his young man photo.
Yeah. Yeah. The one on Wikipedia is from 2024, so very recent. He's 54. He's my age, so.
It's a great age to do movies, I guess.
You're not 54 yet, right? You're 53.
Not yet.
You're close.
Am I? I might be 53. I don't even remember. Yes, I think I am.
Yeah, because I think you're a year younger than I am.
Yeah, I am. Okay.
It's totally fair. I don't always. I have to.
Once you hit 21, it really doesn't fucking matter anymore. I mean, you celebrate the big ones, but really, it doesn't matter.
I'm kind of lucky in that I was born on a decade. I was born in 1970, so usually my age is easier to do the numbers. I just have to remember whether we're into the new, if my birthday's happened this year or not. So I'm still 54, but I'll be 55 here in
See, I'm off by a year and late in the year, so I'm like, carry the 1, add an X, and then there's Y. Who put fucking alphabet in math? Oscar Isaac, he was great in this, and I know it's funny. I know the name so much. I'm like, everybody talks about so much of him. And then I'm looking at his known for, and this is his most known. Like, this is his top most known. I'm like, what? And he was in Star Wars as Poe Dameron. Sure. Probably the best character of the last 3 movies. Yeah, Star Wars.
You know, the movie that I got to know him with was the Coen Brothers movie, Inside Llewyn Davis, which
okay.
It's not an action movie. It's about a folk singer. But it is such a good movie. It's funny because we're talking about Poe Dameron and
Moon Knight. He's Moon
Knight. No, but I'm just trying to bring.
He's not really Moon Knight. He's Mark Spector. There's not really much Moon Knight in Moon Knight. So
I'm just trying to bring this back to Force Awakens because Domhnall Gleeson is the redheaded Empire officer that leads. I think in our very first podcast we talked about a movie which was what was it?
Force.
The last of the Return of.
Isn't it Force Awakens, right?
There was Force Awakens, and then it was I don't know.
Oh, we did the final one.
Yeah, this Return of the Sith. I don't know where Emperor Palpatine comes back from the dead. And,
Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, but no, it was The Last Jedi actually, where isn't it? Poe Dameron shows up and confronts Domhnall Gleeson, who's on the bridge, and they have kind of this exchange, and where Domhnall Gleeson's Empire officer is yelling at him, and Poe Dameron's just kind of like, I'm waiting, I haven't heard anything, just playing all dumb and stuff like that. But then in Inside Llewyn Davis, one of the funniest scenes is when they're doing a folk song they're recording a folk song, and it's who's the one who plays the big bad from Force Awakens? shit, what's his name? You know, he's in all sorts of stuff. He was in he's a epic Saturday Night Live
you're
host.
talking the you're talking the new Vader.
Yeah.
Kylo Ren by
Ren.
Adam Driver.
Good job. Adam Driver has a bit role in Inside Llewyn Davis. I'm just drawn from the fact that this is another Star Wars character, but where he does kind of the sound effects for this song. This movie takes place in like this early 60s, I don't know, the folk era. And this scene is so funny because Oscar Isaac is playing Llewyn Davis, who's been he's playing guitar for this song. It's who's the NSYNC guy or the Backstreet Boys?
That's are you talking
Justin
Bieber?
Timberlake? No. Justin Timberlake. I don't know whichever he was in, but he's the one that's singing because he's also plays one of the folk singers. He's a really good actor in this movie. And then there's Adam Driver that's sitting there in the background making all these funny noises from his mouth. I don't know why I'm trying to explain this, but it's probably coming off sounding like I'm on crack or something because you just got to look it up. Look up Inside Llewyn Davis, and I think it's Thank You, Mr. Kennedy song, and you can find it on YouTube. And it's this, it's him, it's them playing this song, and it's so funny.
That's actually his second most known for movie. Oscar
it's
Isaac,
a really good movie. It's the Coen brothers at their best. Even though it wasn't a huge success, the movie is really solid.
So I've got it pulled up, and I'm seeing some of the people in this, and this looks like it's got a big crew. I saw John Goodman in it.
Oh yeah,
really love.
John Goodman's great, but again, it's a thinking movie. It's got that folk pace, but he does all the singing is done live. And this, I think he actually learned guitar for this movie, but they recorded the songs live, and he plays
that's right up your alley.
He's a really good artist, and the way they pulled off the filmmaking, it's
definitely a music kind of guy.
Yeah,
I get that. Yeah. So it's kind of funny that Ex Machina is his number one. Last Jedi shows up in there, Poe Dameron. That's kind of what Moon Knight I was going to bring up because Moon Knight I like to fuck with. Moon Knight.
That still hasn't been greenlit for a second season. I think so I don't think we're going to get anything more from that. I wasn't a huge fan of the first season, but I really liked the potential. So
I did too, and I was just like, it just needed more Moon Knight in its Moon Knight show. it just that was my biggest problem with it. So yeah, it's just interesting stuff. But it's funny because you always hear his name. He's like this. You're always thinking he's like, oh my God, he's this great big actor, and then you really look at it and you're like, well, not really much. I mean, he's been in a lot of stuff, but he's always kind of just. They're little things. Although I have to say he is in one of my favorite movies that I know we've talked about, and it's my favorite movie that I think a lot of people like to hate on, but it's also a Zack Snyder, which kind of is funny. But I like Sucker Punch, and he was in Sucker Punch.
Oh, he was? Okay. Blue Jones, I see, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because I know people just, as far as, I mean, Snyder, you kind of love or hate him, but this is one of those ones that most people even that like him are kind of like, I don't know. But I've always loved that movie. I thought it was great.
No, I mean, he did 300. He did Watchmen. Those are both movies that I study. But then you see him over and over again, and you start getting tired because, that's where Zack Snyder has kind of regurgitated a lot of his style, and so you get so tired of his slow motion action sequences that it's just like, oh God, give me a break. So
his Justice League cut, oh my God, that was such a horrible fucking.
And that was something that I was such
That's 4 hours I'm never going to get back.
I was such a hater of the original Justice League that hit the theaters that I was a lot more supportive of that one.
Which is totally funny because I actually think the theatrical release is better than the
I know you do because we podcast on it. And
I know.
Our audiences can check out that podcast from a couple years ago if you go back into our history. It's actually, I think, a pretty good one.
It is because we get deep into it and we have a lot of good discussions. But yeah, so yeah, it's just a great, it is a great thinking movie. It'll get some great conversations going.
We heard it from Noah. It's a great thinking movie. There you go. That's good enough for me.
As my daughter says, it's a good beer.
Fuck Reno.
Fuck Reno.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You were going to say that to the end, probably.
No, actually, what I had for the end is right here.
Okay.
The answer to your real question is you bet she can fuck.
Hail Caesars.
What does that mean?